Going on, guys? Michael here. Energy meets energy tech live happy hour 2.0. I'm excited to be here and kick this event off. I want to first say a quick thank you to Entercom and Oil and Gas 360 for making all of this possible. They'll be rolling out some information here very soon about the Oil and Gas Conference, which is the go-to investor relations conference. There's some really cool stuff that's going to be happening with the new format that they have rolling out, so stay up to date on that. You can stay up to date with all of your information for Entercom and Oil and Gas 360 at the world's greatest website, www.oilandgas360.com. And I'm excited to be sitting here and honestly just going to be a listener on this panel. We did one of these last month and we had some great feedback, so we brought it back for round two. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Michael Soker, who's going to get this kicked off. And yeah, I'm excited for this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tanner. Welcome everybody to a happy hour of energy and energy technology virtual panel. What we aimed to do last month was to bring people together while they were in lockdown and talk about a couple of big movements in the markets. One, of course, is energy, oil prices, and the other one is the global pandemic going on. And we want to tie that back into how it relates to energy technology and startups. Last month, we covered more of a high-level market overview of what's going on, what we thought was going to be happening. And this month, I'm really excited to have Ventry Technology, Jeff and Brandon Boyle, not related, on with us all the way from Canada. It's a company that's in energy technology at the helm and at the head of digital transformation. Besides that, we're joined by Mr. David Forsberg of Ascent Energy Ventures and Dan Genovese. I hope I pronounced that correct.
That works.
That works perfect. So what we wanted to do and cover first is ask Jeff and Brandon about Ventry Technology, give us a little bit of a highlight and an overview of what they do and how they got there. Brandon, if you want to take that away, please.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And thanks for having us on the show. Obviously, this is exciting. We're glad to be here with you guys and share the story of Ventry, how we came to be and what we're working on. And hopefully helping evolve the energy industry. That's some exciting stuff that we're working on. So again, just to quickly introduce myself, Brendan Boyle, CEO of Ventry Technologies. I have my colleague Jeff Boyle here as well, our VP of Business Development and Marketing. And really just to give you some context on Ventry, who we are, where we came from. Ventry is fundamentally a data preparation organization, and that's a really fancy word in terms of what this is. But we're focused on the traceability and data quality as it relates to material, assets, and components that go into your energy infrastructure. So that's a whole lot of fancy words for saying we're finding better ways to manage the data and trust the data and bring access to the data about your pipes, valves, flanges, fittings, all that are working their way through a supply chain and eventually into operations as part of your pipeline or eventual facility, whatever it may be. To give you a little context as to where we came from, I mean, our company was founded on the concepts, people welding two pieces of pipe together in the field. They just couldn't find the information about what the material was that they were welding together. Couldn't get the right welding, couldn't get that information. This started causing delays. There started to be losses of traceability within the material, and thus you're seeing costs add up. And we knew when we started to see this really piling up, we knew there was something there that we could help solve. So interestingly, when we first founded the company 8 years ago, we thought it'd be a great idea to just slap a bunch of RFID tags on these pipes, track them all the way through the supply chain, and hope for the best. Tech companies always pivoting. We realized when we started to get the data to put behind those RFIDs and barcodes, hey, this data needs some work. There's some issues potentially with the data, and not anybody's wrongdoing or issues, but you're talking about millions upon millions of pieces of data moving through supply chains and eventually getting into either file boxes or SharePoint sites or wherever they may be. Really difficult for operators to make sense of this. And so we came up with this combination of software and services that's really helping facilitate gathering that information, processing it, applying almost like a filter type concept to check it for not only the traceability of it, does it make sense all the way from point A to point Z once you've gone all the way through the process? Is there regulatory compliance issues that may be cropping up there? All these types of things we're able to check for. Are you within spec for conformance? All those different types of things. So we were able to build out this software and service, and really, it's been sort of exponential in terms of what we've been able to do with this. And the more we've evolved the company and the business, you start to get into, well, hey, there's a lot of digital transformation going out there. We're seeing great solutions for data visualization, predictive analytics, better integrity management. And all of these solutions need a really nice baseline of data. And we're able to facilitate that because we finally are helping provide some trust and access to that information. So I'll take a step back. That's a long-winded intro of the company, but yeah, that's how Vintry came to be and where we're at today.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, man. That's a great overview. I think one of the earliest questions that I had when I originally met you guys was, how did you initially go to market? Because inevitably, a lot of energy technology companies, I think, struggle to not only get an initial customer, but then gain traction in that market, right? We're seeing a proliferation of software and technologies that can do everything like a Swiss Army knife for the oil and gas industry. And how did you exactly pinpoint that core value and value proposition? How did you provide it to your early customers?
Yeah, well, I can start with this one and give the early days experience, and maybe Jeff can add on it with that. But we had the great opportunity when we first started the company to partner with a major player in the space. That really makes a big difference if you want to think of it as the leading bleeding edge, whatever it may be. They came to when we first started talking about this, we were able to have the dialogue around the problem, that concept of losing traceability and the issues and the risks that surround that. And fundamentally having that partnership with a major player in the midstream space, that just went so far for us to be able to learn, really immerse ourselves in their process, do all our business analysis, requirements gathering from a software standpoint. And we've continued to grow that relationship with them today. Outstanding partner that we're really excited to be with. So that was, obviously, absolutely. I understand your point that it's a challenge when you're trying to establish that initial core values. We were able to work with a big player in the space, and that really helped us get the message out there, broadcast it to the broader market. And I think this industry, certainly, there's a lot of communication between the players involved. And when you can prove something out, build up a case study, build up some good, solid actual credibility with existing customers, that helps spread the message around to the broader industry.
Well, and I guess that thank you. And that's a great point. And I think my question for Dan and David would be, in terms of credibility and taking account what's going on in today's environment, how do you see software spend as it relates to providing value and credibility in today's market and going out and actually growing a company in software services within energy? Do you see that that's changed quite a bit since the beginning of the pandemic and oil prices? Do you think we should focus continually on that core value, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll jump in first, and then David, you can kind of add on to it. I was just reading an article, very well-respected group. There's a quote that said, with the precipitous price drop, one thing is certain, it's created an even greater urgency and opportunity for efficiency and innovation in how we operate. Again, I think as the dust kind of settles and everybody kind of gets their bearing from kind of the double whammy, the pandemic and the price war, I think the emerging energy companies will be looking very soberly at how to implement technology and looking for a standout company, looking for somebody with experience, like you guys, have, and so many others do. But looking for somebody that can solve problems and create that efficiency and that innovation is going to be so critical, I think, in the market moving forward.
Yeah, oil and gas tends to be a fast follower in terms of adoption, but I think that the pandemic and the price war has left the industry in a forced situation of needing to adopt these technologies. The free will of making a decision is no longer there. This randomness and disruption has really shaken the status quo. And I think the opportunity for companies that have proven track records, interactions with other customers already, I think there's a opportunity for them to really become adopted in the space. So I think the energy tech space is an exciting area right now.
Yeah, I think
I
the
know.
situation has created the urgency. The opportunity is up to the tech company, to kind of really step into that void and really get out there and show what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, one of the
Yeah.
things I think is going to be important going forward is delivering on what you say you can do. And this is something that I liked what you just said in your opening, is that I think there's this layer or management and media and everybody wants to leap to AI and machine learning, whether they really understand what that means or all the technology that needs to be built to enable that. I think that it starts at the data gathering and then the data cleaning. And if you don't have that, it doesn't matter what your algorithms can do, what your logic can do, because you're junk in, junk out. And that's one of the things I think everybody is forgetting in this space, is that data needs to be gathered and cleaned. And that's something that I think is vital going forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like the points about garbage in, garbage out, right? And this is a question for Jeff. Jeff, stemming that and kind of some of the recent news, maybe you can share that Google came out with earlier this week. How do you see the future vision of your company as it relates to making sure the data is clean when we have announcements like Google saying that they no longer really want to play in the space? And how do you see that as an opportunity for growing your company?
Right. So real quick, I'm going to add to what Brendan talked about our go-to-market. So we were able to partner with a single supplier that gave us that opportunity to actually create almost a custom dev opportunity that gave us our initial credibility within the market. Then we were able to build out the first foundation of what we now offer and what we launched in November of 2019 and learn with our customers because they had such a bleeding pain. And that was so valuable, and that built that trust and that credibility because we weren't a solution trying to find a nail. We were someone that had been in the trenches with the customers and experienced their pain. So when it comes to a statement around like Google saying they're not going to do this, or the major wealth banks of Norway hypocritically pulling out of Canadian oil sands while they've just funded one of the largest offshore oil programs in Norway. I mean, I think this is where we're seeing a lot more funding going into VMS, vertical market software, and organizations seeing that. We were on a webinar this morning with some of the major midstream companies of North America. They specifically were telling everyone in the webinar, their first approach was to find one company that could do everything for them. And then they realized that didn't work for them. Their second approach has been find the niche organizations that are focused in their target areas and know their pain and know their solution and know their customers and have the trust and credibility, and work with them and make sure that they're approaching it from an integration standpoint. Make sure they're approaching their solution to play nice with the rest of the ecosystem, like Brendan said. Make sure that they can feed into these other solutions that focus on where they can be best. Don't be the jack of all trades. Be the best at what you can do.
That's phenomenal feedback. That's phenomenal. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, from a E&P standpoint, I mean, obviously, or from any company standpoint, kind of that integration piece is so critical. You want to select a provider, even if it is very specific to your solution, very niche, that can communicate with other software that needs to be in that flow of information and data, or analysis, kind of the analytical tools. So yeah, I think integration's pretty critical. It takes away a lot of headaches and makes it very easy, to move forward with the technology.
Well, that's a great point, and I want to circle back to a comment Jeff made about initially companies were looking at generalist solutions, and then they narrowed their focus more niche. And you're saying, be the champion in the specific sector that you're in. How do you really pick that apart when we've seen a lot of emerging technologies in energy technology over the last 5, 6, 7 years? And how do you think you have found that niche that actually works for you? I know you said you were fortunate and were smart enough to be able to find a way to work with an actual company that gave you feedback, but from a higher level, what do you think an approach might be to carve out that niche, right? Because data is data, analytics is analytics, and what you guys are doing is very niche focused, yet can be applied to a lot of different companies. So how do you think about that discovery process?
I think from that perspective, there's well, we right now in our pitch deck, we share the two spectrums, right? We have competitors that are indirect competitors because they mistaken traceability for tracking. And so they built out major logistics and tracking systems and then tried to go to everyone and say, hey, we're already doing some of your logistics, use this software for all your material management. And then our other side of our competition is actually those massive data prep companies and data visualization companies that have built great tools that someone could pick them up and try to refine them and try to make them industry specific. But why would you go down that major pathway of potentially needing to retool a system that was built for the general good of a solution versus look for a solution that is industry specific, was built with the customer at hand. And I mean, oil and gas is a great example. Oil and gas is similar to a lot of industries, but very different than a lot of industries. Traceability, what one of our main focuses isn't new. We didn't invent anything here. We're taking the best practices from automotive, aviation, aerospace, seeing what Toyota has done for the last 3 decades and saying, hey, how can we give Enbridge, TC, Kinder Morgan the ability to turn a switch next week and catch up 3 decades to Toyota. So it's not like we're creating anything new. We're doing all that legwork of fine tuning those different solutions and making them industry specific, because someone that built a generalized data prep tool isn't going to know the difference between someone's data where WT means wall thickness and WT means weight. And they're not going to know all these little nuances that this data just would completely cripple a generalized solution.
I think that's a key point to a lot of the technology in this space that we're looking at here. It's not necessarily reinventing the wheel. A lot of things exist in other industries and have already been done, and processes have already been done. But there are some little nuances to the oil and gas space in particular that have created barriers to entry that I think a lot of these technology companies that are entering the space can simply grab technology or ideas that are already being applied successfully in major industries and apply them in this space to help improve the industry. And that's why I think this adoption is going to happen fairly rapidly, because we're not reinventing the wheel here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely agree with David. I think there's an inherent philosophy called not built here, right? That a lot of companies have that said, hey, well, if we need this, we can do this on our own. And I think it takes, a different approach and different perspective on the account of executives and corporate development personnel, and even a lot of investors from venture capital and private equity. But it's saying they do exist and how we can integrate that better, because certainly if you thought of it, somebody's probably tried to build it and probably unsuccessfully have gone to market, or something that's fallen apart. On the note of that, and I think there's a lot of people out there that certainly are interested in what we're doing, that, as you know, there's no shortage of companies that are trying to raise money, that have been doing so for a very long time. And I think what's unique in this time frame is energy technology, because I can talk about the general VC and private equity landscape all day, but in energy technology and energy, as we're watching what happens to balance sheets and demand, supply, storage, all these things. Jeff and Brandon, you mentioned a pitch deck. I'm sure you guys are in constantly fundraising mode, because that's what startups do. How has fundraising been going? What do you think of the overall condition or the market right now for raising money for an energy tech company? What would your advice be if I said, hey, I have an energy tech SaaS company and I want to raise some money? What comes to your mind from your experience?
That's a great question, Michael, and absolutely right. You're always raising money. That's we're always in it. So, I think obviously there's I don't know what you want to call it, an initial shock phase probably that we're in right now. There's I think I saw, somebody that a connection that I have was calling it kind of triage mode, where VCs are kind of just trying to understand the market and understand where we're going. But my thoughts are still extremely positive when it comes to the energy tech space in general. I think broadly, I think companies will look to technology, will look to efficiency as we come out of this and start to kind of rebuild the momentum in the industry. And absolutely, I mean, energy tech companies are going to play a huge part of that. And I think, if you're able to show weathering the storm through this difficult time, showing the value that you've been able to build up within your customer base, able to preserve, able to show essential need within the organizations and the customers that you work with, I think that's going to go a long ways when it comes to raising money. I mean, you've added value to your customers and been able to persevere through all of this. I think that's a huge thing. So
a number of companies that I've spoken to are seeing upticks in inbound calls and even revenues throughout this, if they're not focused exclusively on drilling, but in more back office operations. Has anybody seen that as well, or heard discussions on that?
Yeah, I have heard from a number of folks that, digital oil field ticketing, back office solutions, so you mentioned, I think are starting to see an uptick in demand, although oil field service workers are disappearing overnight, right? Again, that going back to that COVID and the global pandemic is causing the need for digital transformation for sure. David, what do you think about relative valuations that pertains to today's environment versus what it was 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago in the future? Do you think that, well, first of all, I'll just say this. I think valuations have gotten inflated over the last couple of years. I don't think that's a secret. I think valuations are high, but do you see that is this an opportunity from an investment standpoint to get a little bit lower valuation? It's a touchy topic, but what do you think about that?
I think valuations are outrageously high.
Yeah,
I disagree.
And my feedback would be that in the last 2 months of the market essentially deferring a great deal of their projects, certain companies like Ventry have been able to obtain half a dozen new POs, hire new individuals, and show that they can grow in this market. So the individual companies that can show they can grow in this kind of market are now going to be able to go back to the VCs they were talking to and say, actually, our price went up.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to jump in here, I mean, I think when you look at the buyer side, right? I think tech companies need to come in and need to know and be able to demonstrate an ROI, because CapEx budgets are tight. And I'm not sure anybody's going to let loose of that cash and issue that PO unless you can demonstrate a legitimate solved problem and a return on investment for them. But if you have that, I think you are going to play well in the market. I think you're going to have an open field to run in.
Dan, are you starting to see some of your E&P clients discussing how energy tech is a strategic advantage for them, or how it pertains to them from almost a marketing perspective?
Yeah, I think there's 2 parts to that. One, I think they're all trying to start to get their arms around how they accomplish the work they need to accomplish more efficiently, considering the head counts are down, right? And what you used to maybe throw people at, you're going to have to find a technological solution for. Gosh, there was a second point. Oh, the ESG point. I mean, I think from a information and a data standpoint, the ability to collect it, to monitor it, to measure it, as it relates to kind of the environmental issues, whether it be air quality and other types of things. I think in a pipeline system, making sure that you're monitoring for leaks, you're monitoring for potential hazardous situations. It's going to be imperative. So I think technology in those 2 buckets are going to play well. Again, if you can demonstrate a return on investment and solve a problem that a company has, those 2 big buckets. Is it efficiency play where I can, do more with less? Or does it solve an issue with making sure that I am being a quality ESG sustainable performer in the market?
I would like to add there that from even back to the go-to-market conversations, for us, a big hurdle for us was to create an ROI message that was built for two groups. There was the group of the construction managers and the project managers that needed to see the ROI within their infrastructure project. And then there was the ROI conversation with the executives and the higher ups that were looking at the long-term regulatory compliance, the insurance, the ESG. We're now seeing in Canada success stories where individuals out west are making major contracts of gas sales out east because of their ESG rating. So there's, for us and for other startups, definitely don't try to make your ROI message just one bucket, because there's two very distinct groups of stakeholders. Well, there's a lot more, but for us, there's two very distinct groups of stakeholders. And there's the immediate ROI, and then there's the long-term ROI. And I mean, in our early years, we only really talked about the long-term regulatory compliance, and you could see that was a struggle and a hurdle.
Yeah, it comes down to who are you selling to, right?
Toning your message. To get adoption, you have to sell to everyone.
Yep.
You have to have a message that clicks with everyone.
So that's a really smart point. And I think I've always been very focused, especially with early stage companies, on proving ROI and showing it. And I think now more than ever, that's very, very important. And I really appreciate that point, because it's not an easy sales cycle. You don't go to a meeting and sign a contract in this type of scenario, right? There's technical due diligence and calculation, stuff like that. We had a question from someone watching that asked, can you talk about why people haven't actually implemented a lot of these strategies or processes, given they already exist or are known by the industry? And I think it kind of goes back to this entire conversation about, not only multiple ROI scenarios, but the pandemic and oil prices causing the need to digitally transform. But why do you think that, you're known out there, or you're getting a footing in the industry, and seemingly it's becoming more important? I think that's an area some of the viewers would like to know about. If anyone wants to try and tackle that.
Look, human beings are risk adverse many ways. Okay, so to disrupt the status quo takes some sort of event, takes some sort of pressure to do so and motivate that change. And so I think the biggest reason is that the status quo has been maintained for many years. And some of that is a reason, like, it doesn't make sense to necessarily adopt technologies in $100 oil because you just want to drill as many wells as humanly possible. So I understand that delay, but becoming the biggest digital laggard industry out there, there suddenly needs to be a catch up if they want to continue to operate, and it's going to become a competitive advantage, mainly because others are going to start adopting, so you're going to have to. Or you've laid off 30% of your workforce, and you no longer have the barrier there, the human barrier to adoption of technology. Or you need to do it because your new investors, because you've gone bankrupt, and your debt holders are now your equity holders, are demanding that you become more efficient and operate better. So I think that all of these different things, and it'll be different for different people, but they are triggering the go part of the human brain, where the risk is now to not adopt versus the risk of adoption being there. So it's framed the issue much differently than it has ever been in the past 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah, the current market conditions is the catalyst, right, for the change. And so I think you have the catalyst. And as David said, I mean, I'm not sure when we're going to see, expensive barrels of oil anytime soon. So the driver is efficiency, 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 right? So you have a catalyst and you have a drive to efficiency, because I don't know if anybody who hasn't been drinking very much is projecting, $60, $70, $80 barrel oil anymore. So, the time is right technology in the industry and adoption of it.
That makes a lot of sense. And it kind of along the lines of that, and this is kind of question for anyone is how do you see software spend in a time of reduced CapEx? Because we're talking about, David, to your point about, debt holders, how do you see software spend going forward? And maybe for Jeff and Brandon, if let's say you guys do everything you're supposed to do in the next 12 months, you crush fundraising, you crush product, how do you see the importance of what you're doing being spent on? I mean, in realistic sense, obviously you created something great and you love it, but in the ecosystem, what does everybody kind of think about that? Where's the money going?
Well, I can take a stab at that one. I think undeniably there's going to be some challenges. I think to David's point about people being a little bit risk averse and really just budgets being tight is going to be there. And it really circles back to that point of, what ROI are you hammering home and showing right out the gate? How are you able to help these people tick a box? Whether it's regulatory compliance, helping with the ESG, augmenting that sort of type of thing. I mean, really, it's I think you may see an eventual little bit of a shift, some dollars back into that because people want to find those efficiencies. They're going to need to find those efficiencies. So, again, I think we're just rehashing the point we've made here, but you really got to be able to hammer home that ROI and show that it's there because, then it's smart. It's just smart business to buy the solutions, right?
And coming back to the previous question about why isn't there faster adoption? You can have an amazing solution, and if you can't communicate it, it will sit on the shelf. It will sit on the shelf. It will die if you can't communicate that solution. Brendan mentioned earlier that our first iterations were RFIDs and barcodes. When I started 4 years ago with Venturi, the amount of people that just was like, "Oh, Venturi, the barcode company," right? It gave me nightmares for a while because our communication, our message was so off. And everyone was focusing on what physically they could put in their hands. So from a status quo standpoint, to David's point, everyone was able to just be like, we don't have money for barcodes. And they just moved on. And until you got in front of enough people and you're just like, you don't need barcodes, you don't need secondary identifiers, you just need good data. And then you had to wait for certain areas in the ecosystem to catch up because now we can show in these amazing 3D data visualization models where instead of augmented reality or VR showing you an elbow on a pipe or on a facility, you can click on it and you can see what was engineered, what was procured, and what was actually installed. That's usable data. That's accessible data. Versus a couple of years ago, everyone was just like, "Oh, VR, cool." Now they're like, "Wait a second, we can see before we go do a shut-in or shutdown. We can see and make sure we have the right parts for the right pieces." Because we know what was ordered, what was engineered, and what's actually installed right now. So the other point I would put is to the duration of adoption. It was said earlier, these major infrastructure projects are from feed, pre-feed, to detailed design, to procurement, to construction. A lot of these we're talking about 4 or 5 years. With FERC not having a quorum for a while, like some of these projects have been sitting on the shelves for half a decade. One of our major projects that we can't name by names, but I mean, it's 13 years old. So it's one of the things that it takes a while for major energy infrastructure to go. And if you want change management to actually happen and happen right, you need to be in the conversations at the very beginning of projects. When they do that pre-feed budget, they need to insert a little line for innovation and digitalization into that pre-feed budget. And you need to be able to have those conversations with the higher ups to make sure that they insert a line item for that.
Real quick question. You guys mentioned pipeline. I assume, can your technology be applied to kind of the refining aspect of systems as well as liquefaction on the LNG side?
Brendan, you want this one or?
Sure. I'll do a quick intro maybe, and then you go from there. But our solution is designed to be asset agnostic, honestly. So it's, you could do pipes, valves, flanges, and fittings. The next day you could be doing refinery components, et cetera. I mean, our focus as we've built this up and grown the organization has been midstream. We've expanded to turbines, compressors, et cetera, more facilities. And we are looking now to get into the refinery space. There's a huge amount of order fulfillment and things like that surround that. And then even more upstream as well, downhole, et cetera. Anything that's asset centric. There's a lot of data that goes into it. There's a complicated supply chain. So really that would be our focus. Jeff, if you want to add to that.
I would just say the super majors and the majors, while they have come around to finding niche solutions, I know it's different which side of the border, they still are focused on a solution being able to handle all of their mechanical assets. So for us, our older iteration was very specific to an asset class. And then that taught us for our launch in 2019 to make sure it was asset agnostic so that a company could grow with us. And again, the operators that were on with us this morning, they all talked about eating the elephant one bite at a time. So take a stab at pipe, then go bends, then go facilities, turbo machinery, then go downstream. A mechanical asset's a mechanical asset, but don't try to take it all at once. Just take it one step at a time.
They must have listened to our last happy hour because that's what I said. One bite at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
One sip at a time.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Want to kind of keep this short. Does anyone else have any points they want to share? Jeff and Brandon, thank you so much, Jeff. I love a lot of the points you made, about how do we go to market, about how we think about fitting in the general ecosystem. I love the insight about getting into that budget early on. I think a lot of people wouldn't even consider that or understand that process. I think that's really key. And again, that goes back to understanding your sales cycle and the realities of what it takes to survive in energy and be a technology company within energy, right? It's not easy. It's a long haul. I love the insight about how you've kind of pivoted, especially in narrative, right? You went from, we sell RFID tags to we actually take accurate data and make it usable. And it's traceability and it can be applied to a lot of places, but we're very good at this one point. Obviously, the environment is, an upheaval, although I don't think we're going to go back to negative prices as future contracts are getting better the longer you look at them. Does anyone have any final thoughts, suggestions about energy technology you want to share?
Yeah, I'll just add that we have the catalyst, which has created the opportunity. There's certainly a need. But you got to have that ROI and you got to understand your ROI, sell the ROI, and that ROI is more than just dollars. It's ESG. There's a lot of problems that technology can solve for companies. You just got to understand, what problem you're solving and then sell it.
I think that one of my comments is to all the people out there who have recently been laid off from the industry and trying to figure out what their options might be looking down the pipeline of the industry. I think that there is an opportunity, and we saw it a little bit in 2015 where there was a wave of layoffs and we had great companies that were founded over that period of time from people who left the industry who had some sort of pain point that annoyed them in their previous job, and they started a company to try and address that. And some of those have become very successful. So I would urge you, if you have been laid off recently and you are trying to figure out what you might be able to do, if you're so inclined, I would urge you to look at the pain points, things that annoyed you in the industry, and try and develop companies, whether they be digital or not, that can address those pain points. Because when a door closes, another one opens, and this could be a very big opportunity for you long-term in your life. And I think if you're planning on the industry to come back and rehire all of the people who have been laid off, I think that's a disappointing result. I think headcounts will be declining over the next 20 years in E&P.
I think I would add to that, Brendan left out that he's a pipeline engineer. He worked for an operator before he helped found Venture Technologies. He had that knack of being able to take what the operators didn't have and translate it to the dev team, right? And to your point, David, we've been on a lot of forums recently talking to individuals that are in that situation, and they're asking, what do you do? How do you transition? I hope that there's a lot more companies that will be like Ventry that can show stories of individuals coming from different markets and transitioning into tech as translators. They find an opportunity where they're passionate about the industry they were in, and then they're really interested in data or dev, and they see the opportunity to be that translator. So that was something I'd add there. And then to Michael, final thoughts. I know I stated and Brendan stated that we got really lucky because we found a major player that wanted to take us through their journey of their pain. That's not going to be the case for every new technology and new startup. One thing I would recommend is that there's a major shift in the market right now for validation, and the Deloittes, the Microsofts, and others are becoming validation tools for these owner operators. And even though we've got our credibility and trust, we're still building partnerships with those organizations because they're the ones that are going to take us into other operators and other E&Ps, because they are being leaned on by, I mean, there's news articles of Chevron, Suncor, and others partnering with Microsoft as their validation tool. So if you can't find a customer that's got a pain that's going to take you through the journey, you might be able to find an opportunity to work with one of the validators and take them through the journey.
That is excellent. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Brandon? Anyone else?
I mean, yeah, I could just quickly close, echo a lot of those points. I mean, Jeff, everybody's made some really great points on this panel. I mean, I think, I guess maybe just broadly speaking, in spite of the difficult conditions out there, I think energy tech is coming and it's going to come strong. And I think it's there's a drive to the efficiency, a drive to the ESG, and I think there's huge opportunity in this. And honestly, it's why we're so excited to come to work every day. We love what we do. We're excited to be part of the change. It's a fun thing to do. And on David's point about jumping into something like that, if you've been laid off, it's a really fun, gratifying career, and we enjoy what we're doing, and we're excited about the change that we're affecting. So, yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, Jeff and Brandon, thank you so much for all your time, all the insights. I think we're all really excited to see where Ventry Tech goes, how you accomplish your goals during this environment, and then onward through 2021. So we'll be staying in touch. Michael Tanner, Stu Turley, thank you so much for being in the background and helping put this together. Check out Intercom and oilgas360.com. Dan, as always, sir, appreciate your insights and your participation.
Thank you.
Mr. Forsberg, Ascent Energy Ventures. If you're in energy technology, David is somebody you definitely want to talk to. I am with WG Nielsen Company out of Cherry Creek. We're an investment bank. Stay tuned. We're going to continue to do this. We've had a number of inquiries from startups that want to be involved and executives that want to be involved. So we're going to do this again. So we'll can I say tune in because we're on TV? So tune in next time. We'll send out some links and make some posts. And everybody have a great June. Make sure to crush it. And I hope that everyone and their families is well and safe during these times. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Good.